Gangs and gangsters, they're not only black, but a lot of times when you look at the news or when you read about gangs, you always have this picture in your mind that they're black, they're young, words like thug, black young guys, maybe black teenagers, urban, inner city, and that's the picture that most people, when they hear the news, that they get in their head, especially with what happened recently during Christmas. Gangs and gangsters are not only black. The American news, they only show black men, but there are many gangs that are not all black. There are gangs that are Latin, white, Russian, women, mixed gangs, and the news, they don't show it. They only show you males, and they only show black males. And they only talk about black on black crime as if that's the only crime that ever happens. And I'm not saying that it isn't a sad thing or a bad thing that's happening. I believe the reason why Chicago is looked at a lot more lately, because not just based on just the race of people, but because there's a spike in gang violence in that city. But let's look at other cities like Los Angeles City that has more than 196 different gangs, and that's just in Los Angeles City alone. That's not counting the whole county, which extends further, like the neighboring cities: Inglewood, Compton, Watts, Long Beach, Pasadena, some of the neighboring cities. So when we think about gangs, we think about your Bloods and your Crips. And you see their gang attire, which is very similar but just different colors. You have your red, which symbolizes the blood, and then you have your blue, which symbolizes the Crips. And a lot of times they'll adopt logos, team hats. They might even take a baseball cap and they might put their street name or their color or the symbol or whatever their gang name. They have gang signs they'll throw up, and they'll symbolize whatever the gang is through their signs, their hand signs, to signal where they come from. And there's different styles of dress. They could wear bandanas, baseball caps. It could be a loud color, anywhere from a loud color to a dark color. And there's specific colors that they stick to that symbolize what set or what neighborhood gang that they are a part of. And we always hear them talk about males that are in gangs, but you never really hear about the females. There are females that are in gangs. You see this one in the background. They could be related. It could be a girlfriend, could be a cousin. She could have grew up around them. Maybe her brother's in the gang or boyfriend's in the gang, or maybe they are in the gang. And here you have some young ladies that are wearing red, so we're going to assume that they're a part of a blood gang, female blood gang. They also throw up signs. They could be a part of a gang that is not even from Los Angeles. So, just as an example, they'll take photos, they'll have tattoos, they'll wear different symbols, different attire that will symbolize also what gang or set or crew that they're from. And like I was saying in the beginning, there are gangs that are not black, not all black. There are gangs that are from different countries, speak different languages. They may even dress differently, but they're still a gang. They may have different symbols, and this is a Latin gang that's in Los Angeles area, and they could wear blue, they could wear white, they could wear dark colors, they could wear a loud color that symbolizes like red or for blood, or blue for Crip, or it could be a whole nother gang and they have a whole nother style of attire altogether entirely. Then you have a problem here in LA where we have a huge problem with um, cartels. And a lot of times cartels will use the lower level street gangs to do all of their dirty work. And so you have what is called MS-13, which is the Mexican mafia, and it's a street gang. And there is a documentary called Gangland, and it goes through all of the different gangs that exist. Gangs that are from Chicago. It talks about the different gangs in Chicago, different styles of clothes, to, gangs that are Hispanic gangs, female gangs, kingpins. This is MS-13, and this is also MS-13. The gang you seen before prior, that was MS-13, and this says here, violent MS-13 gang member was crossing the border illegally with children. And so I believe that has something to do with the whole immigration issue with criminals coming from other places. And I believe that they're already here. And a lot of times these presidents and politicians, they don't tell the general population where they screwed up. And I believe now they're trying to clean up the mess that they've created. So you see girls are in gangs, they have tattoos on their faces. They could be girlfriends, they could be sisters, they could even be wives. And so you have gangs from different countries. There are Armenian gangs in Glendale and various parts of LA. And they'll also have tattoos. They can have tattoos on their back, on their arm, on their head, their skull, their face, on their legs, anywhere. Body piercings. They wear certain attire. And so you're going to see that a lot of times, one thing you'll notice that gang members, they want you to know that they're in a gang, so they have their gang symbols tattooed. Sometimes it could be the crimes they've committed will be tattooed on them, on various parts of their body. The street number, the street that the gang is a part of, if it's 18th Street, if it's 46th Street, if it's 23rd Street gang, they tattoo it on them. They want you to know what gang and what neighborhood, what set they're from, and what kind of crimes that they've committed, or if they spent time in prison. A lot of times they'll have teardrops that symbolize how long or how many years they've served, and how much time they've done in prison. And there are different gangs with different dialects. Sometimes they use that as an advantage so that they can talk to someone in their home language, and if you don't understand, then it's easier for them to commit some of the crimes that they're involved in. And various crimes could be anywhere from low-level crimes, petty crimes, car theft, stealing. It could be money laundering, drug dealing, drugs transporting, extortion, rape, murder, mayhem, all kinds of chaos. There are Asian gangs, Asian male and female gangs. There are Asian gangs in Long Beach. There are Cambodian Asian gangs. They wear different types of attire. It may not be what you would see the Crips and Bloods wear. It could be dark colors like black, white, dark colors, dark baseball hat, baseball caps. It could have LB on it for a symbol of Long Beach. There has been a rising population of Cambodian Crips and gangbangers and cholas, and this is a chola gang. There's a lot of people who will symbolize gangs, or they'll be affiliated with gangs. They might have music they're involved in, and they might have gang members who are in gangs in the videos, or they're working around close proximity, or they grew up together, they're friends, they hang out with them, they take photos with them. In the next group you're going to see is, I believe, from out of Long Beach. They have LB, and it's I believe it might be possibly a Cambodian gang. There are heavy presence of Cambodian residents in Long Beach and Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and you'll have famous gangsters also, like Snoop Dogg, The Game, MC8, and all these other people. Sometimes gang members will get upset, like real street gang members will get upset and say, those are not real gang members, those are studio gang bangers, because they're famous and they're not really active, in the street anymore, involved in criminal activity. So they think. This is a gang map: Pasadena, South Pasadena, Glendale. It shows Hispanic gangs, but it should also show the Armenian gangs that are in the surrounding areas as well, but it doesn't. It just focuses primarily on Hispanic gangs. And like I said, there's gang personalities, and a lot of times they'll have like some of the things that they experienced in neighborhoods they grew up. Maybe they were around gang members, or they were active in gangs at one time, but somehow they were talented and they were able to pull themselves out of difficult situation and become noticed. And so it's kind of hard to be affiliated with those groups if you're famous and you're involved in a lifestyle that's a lot different. You're not having to struggle to gain money. You're pretty much in a field like a career making music, and you're making your money, in a whole nother way. You're not killing, you're not maiming, you're not hurting, you're not involved in drug or dealing or extortion. You're just a celebrity. And so it gets difficult for those scenarios, those two to go together. And a lot of times, some of these guys can't really just go back to the neighborhood. It depends, who they're around or what dealings they have. A lot of times it could be a thing of giving back to the neighborhood, being thankful that you were able to get out of a situation and pull yourself out of the some of the rough spots. But you'll see there is gangs from different backgrounds, different cities, and not just here in the West Coast. They'll be on the East Coast. There'll be gangs of different cultures and backgrounds as well. And so a lot of times the news will always show you, Chicago. So this is the Vice Lords, and I believe this is their symbol. And they hold their hands up so you can see the symbol. I don't know if this is a newer gang. They look young, they look newer, and they look like they're mixed. You have black and you have look like Latino. And a lot of times those cop shows, they always show black males getting arrested, and it's almost always talked about. It's black men, it's black males, it's Chicago, and it's like crime is only happening in one city with one group and one gender, and this is not the entire truth. A lot of times the gangs are involved in various crimes, but a lot of things that motivate these gangs are money, drugs, women, and criminal element. And so a lot of times you'll have people that come from poor neighborhoods, and if they don't have a lot of skills, or if they've already been in trouble with the law in the past, they become desperate, and so they feel that this is faster money rather than working a regular job or being a square, as they would say, or someone that is an L7, someone that is a square. They gone to school, gone to college, and they have a career. Everybody's not cut out for that. You might hear some guys say that are involved in this lifestyle. So it's like centered around drug money and various criminal activities that are vices that can bring in a sizable amount of income rather quickly. And a lot of guys will say, I don't want to work at Burger King or McDonald's and all those fast food restaurants. That doesn't really get you any money. not the money that you make on the street in one night. So this is what a slang term for Chicago is Chi-Town. So you see it says Chi-Town banging. So this is a picture where you see black males and they're out in the Chicago area and they're gang. They have symbols that they'll scroll on the walls. Looks like the symbol for vice lords. And so I don't know if these are the same symbols that they will use, if they've amped it up or changed it over the years. I don't know. But this is a classic symbol for the vice lords in Chicago. And I believe they're an older gang that has existed for quite a while. The first gangs were white gangsters. And the news, they usually don't want you to know about all of that, the history behind it. But there was a time that there were places where they had older white gangsters. And like, if you read about history, there was a war on alcohol where gangs would rival over alcohol. And it was just like they'd rival over drugs or like marijuana. And once they legalized it, there was no more war over the alcohol. There was no, need to kill and murder one another over, who controlled what. And alcohol was sort of like cocaine back in that time. And the white gangsters that had the control over that and the money and the alcohol trade, it was a big deal back in the days. And you have all those older gang members that you hear about in those old movies, and movies that you see now like nowadays is like Scarface, where you see somebody poor and they come from out of nowhere, or at least an impoverished country, and then they somehow get involved in the vices of the drug trade, and they get a gang together or a band of guys together and create a whole industry behind it, which is the drug trade. So gangs of Chicago. And so if you look at these old movies, are depictions of the old white gangsters that existed back then. And this is an Italian gang, believe it or not, and they were a part of Chicago. And I bet back then they looked like they were just the toughest, roughest, and toughest. Of course now that wouldn't fly, not in today's time. But back then they were tough, or considered tough. And so these are some of the tattoos that you'll see on like Latin or Latino gang members, tribal signs, pictures of males, females, conquistadors, maybe people who are cultural symbols, tribal symbols, and then gang streets, numbers, gang territory, maybe what they would say a homie who died. They'll have their face tattooed, their skull tattooed, ears, neck, shoulders, back, fingers, hands, everywhere. Nowadays they tattoo a lot more than what they used to. So you have cartels that usually are Latino, Hispanic, and Mexican. And in the LA area, there's a big problem with gangs. So we've had a problem for quite a while with gangs, and primarily I believe the cartels are here in Los Angeles. And so I have an article that talks about a criminal element that has gone on in the Los Angeles area that happened at least recent enough to know that the cartels are here in LA. A Mexican cartel used Los Angeles maternity store as a front. So we have lots of stores, lots of restaurants and places, but we have too many of the same places and shady places in downtown Los Angeles and some of the various parts of Los Angeles that You see people coming in, they really don't look like they're really shopping or customers. They have a lot of duffel bags and shady customers or would-be customers. Okay, so the article, it states that authorities are calling downtown LA the new Miami. As far as drug money and laundering schemes go, investigators say Mexican drug cartels have increasingly been laundering money through LA. And a giant 1,000 agent raid seems to support that conclusion. Authorities apparently recouped close to $90 million from dozens of businesses and homes in the downtown of LA. According to the Associated Press, most of the money was in cash and was discovered hidden in cardboard boxes and duffel bags. These are the things that the news people don't really talk about as much as often. The Los Angeles Times reports that at least one cartel also allegedly coordinated with downtown maternity store on a particularly lurid kidnapping scheme. The most harrowing allegation came in the QT fashion case investigated by FBI. A drug distributor for the Sinaloa cartel was taken hostage in October of 2012 after his 100-kilogram shipment of cocaine was seized by U.S. authorities. He was held at a ranch on the Sinaloa. It was called the Culiacan, Sinaloa. And he was beaten, he was shot, he was waterboarded, and electroshocked, an indictment said. The man's family was told to deliver $140,000 in ransom to QT Fashion, a maternity wholesale store, which used the money as payment for a clothing shipment to the Sinaloa retail store. The retail store then paid the cartel $140,000 in peso for the shipment, effectively laundering the ransom. Los Angeles has become an epicenter of narco dollars and money laundering, with couriers regularly bringing duffel bags and suitcases full of cash to many businesses, an assistant U.S. attorney told LA Times. So it's already here. And see, they fail to allow you to see that crime, cartels, all this stuff they're talking about, keeping, terrorists and building a wall, and forget it. It's already done. It's a done deal. The cartels are already here. So they fail to mention that to you, and I'm mentioning it, doing more than mentioning it. And so you see this store. This is the actual store in the downtown LA area where the incident took place, and you see who's running it. And so let's make that be known. So those of you looking for jobs, wonder why you can't get hired on some of them, it's because some of these stores are not even legit. They are fronts for crime and criminal element and activity. And some of those people that you think are innocent are hardly innocent at all. And by the way, they're not black folks either. So let's put that in there, because a lot of times they always seem to target certain groups in certain areas. And I'm not saying that crime isn't happening in Chicago. We see it happening. We see it all the time. But we don't see enough of what's happening in other places. So I just thought I would mention that, because there are things that are happening in other cities that they fail to acknowledge. And that a lot of times I feel like these politicians, they make all these references about, keeping out criminals and all these overtones, but what they're not telling the general population is that they know they've made mistakes, like with Ronald Reagan, with the amnesty, and then the Bush, making, different ways to allow people to come. and not screening people and finding out, well, who are all these people that you're allowing to come, without even knowing what their purposes are for. And so you have a lot of criminal element that has already arrived, and it started way before Donald Trump was elected. So, I believe that a lot of this talk is way overblown and overdue, because whoever they claim they're trying to keep out, they're already here, is what I'm saying. They're already here. It's just you're waiting to see what develops, So you're going to see clips of graphs, and it's depicting the murder that these cartels are capable of committing, and the numbers. Now this was from 2007 all the way to 2011, and so we could just picture now that this is a lot larger now that we're approaching 2017. So the numbers are probably even higher. You're just not hearing about this. They keep a lot of this under wraps because they like to focus on Chicago and black on black crime all the time. Chicago and black males killing black males. They never show all of the other people who are killing other people who aren't black. They like to focus on one group, and they want you to know that one group, they're dangerous. We gotta watch those people. But what about the people you don't watch that you think are innocent, and they probably commit just as much, or even if not even more, behind the scenes, and they can be just as deadly, maybe even worse. Those criminals that you see shooting, they're out there, they're up front and direct. But what about the ones that are behind the scenes, that are pulling the strings and telling the lower life criminals there that are the runners, okay, you go kill this person. Sometimes the persons behind the scenes are even more deadlier, because they carry out, they enforce the order. And then those younger people that you see that are running around, they just carry out the bidding, the dirty work. So you see 90% of cocaine comes from Mexico. And that's not by accident either. So a lot of the things that we're dealing with, the drugs and a lot of the criminal activity, and now they're telling Mexican citizens to arm themselves with guns. Pretty soon they'll be telling people here in the U.S., arm yourselves with guns. All those amendments and all that stuff, all that stuff about, you have the right to bear arms, all this kind of stuff. You know what's going to happen? Everybody's going to have the right, because something, I believe, could take place. But anyway, the flow of transnational crime and violence, it could be anywhere. These cartels are involved in any of these issues here. Murder, assassination, deadly assaults, kidnapping, torture, extortion, corruption, robbery, human smuggling, sex trade, special interests, aliens, all kinds of things, on down the list. And here you see a drug seizure. Look at all of that. And so you have to have like the National Guard, or you have to have like military people to come in and confiscate these types of, like, if it's money or drugs. So they seize a lot of this, and a lot of times I don't believe we're all told about all of it. So you have different types of cartels in different areas. the Sinaloa Cartel, which is most famous for El Chapo, the Juarez Cartel, and you have Beltran. There's various different cartels. There's so many of them. I can't even name all of them. And now this says that drug cartels areas in Mexico. So this is just showing you, it might be fuzzy. That's showing you Mexico, but I'll just tell you, don't bother just looking at that map because they're here. California, they're here. Now this is the Chicago local paper called the La Raza, and it says more for Chicago Latinos. So you have different media outlet everywhere you go, just like here in the States we have Telemundo and Univision and other places. They see the same thing, so they would have like we have the Hoy here. There's Latino newspapers, so if there's Latino newspapers, there are Latino people out there, right? And guess what? Latino gangs, Mexican Chicago gangs, you do not see on Fox News. They're out there. First is scrolling on the walls and paper and anywhere in Chicago. So you're going to see the logos that they have on the walls. So this will give you another picture of Chicago, and this is what you do not see, that there are other gangs, not just only the black gangs out there. There are other gangs in Chicago that aren't just, they're not black. They're of Hispanic culture, and these are the logos that are scrolled on the walls out there in Chicago. The news, they don't let you see those things. They don't want you to see that. You have to look it up, or you have to watch some documentary about Gangland, which they were on Netflix, and Gangland, and it talks about the different genres of gangs, female gangs, the male gangs, the different races of people that are in gangs, what their whole intents are, their logos, what types of symbols they have, what colors they wear, if they have certain sayings, there's certain, mottos that they follow. It could be certain things that they say to each other to symbolize, or certain signs they'll throw up a certain way they wear their clothes to symbolize the gang. So you see the flag color there. That lets you know this is Chicago right here. ChicagoGangs.org. This is Chicago. But we don't see this on the news. We don't see this on the news. They don't show you this on the news. They show you the shooting and the bloody massacre in the black neighborhoods, and it's black on black crime, and Bill Riley's always got to outline all the black on black crime that's happening in Chicago, and that nobody else is committing crimes in Chicago except black folks. So those are not real facts. It's not the truth. What he's not telling you is there are other people that are also in gangs and committing crimes just like anybody else. And it's not just black, and it's not just Hispanic either. And guess what? It's white people that are in gangs as well. There are Asian people in gangs. There are not just males in gangs. There are females that are also in gangs. And they don't tell you these things. They just only focus on one neighborhood, one area, or one city. And a lot of times they make people who are racist almost believe that they're the only gang that exists in the world. It's crazy, but some people think like that. But anyway, reality, that's not true. Yes, the crime is bad in Chicago, and yes, there's a lot of killing, and it's sad, and it is black on black killings. But those are not the only gangs, and that's not the only neighborhood where killing goes on. and gangs and murder and extortion and crime and drug dealing and sex trafficking and whatever else. It goes on in other cities and other countries and other states. So these are symbols. This is a gang. It's called the La Raza. They'll have tattoos on their stomach, on their face, on their head, on their neck, on their arms, on their legs, anywhere, fingers. The women do the same thing. Sometimes the tattoo can be on the neck to symbolize what gang, what street, what neighborhood they're from, what set they're from. And so you'll have gangs that'll meet at a friend's house. Sometimes they'll have a party and they'll hang out, and they may have weapons. There's mixed gangs. They could be from all different backgrounds. They could be Hispanic, they could be white, they could be black. They're mixed gangs. They're gangs that are not just primarily from one racial background. But when you look at the news, you wouldn't know it, because they always talk about one city with one group of people all the time. So you see another group of people that are in a gang, and they throw up their symbols. Their hand symbols represent what gang they're from, what neighborhood. It could also be the street number, and they'll tattoo. And a lot of times gangs, they want you to know who they are, so they don't hide themselves. The tattoos pretty much show you. It's a way to let you know that they're from this neighborhood, or they're from that set, or they're from that gang. And sometimes it serves as intimidation as well, so that people know you don't want to mess with these people because they're in a gang. They could have different colors. It could be green, it could be black, it could be not just your typical like Crip and Blood color like red and blue, but it could be, they could adopt another color. Like this gang, they primarily have a lot of green bandanas. So whatever gang they're from in Chicago, they wear a lot of green. And this is females that are affiliated. They could be sisters, they could be girlfriends, but they're in the gang as well. They're affiliated with the gang members, and so they wear the color to show they're part of the gang. And you have girls that'll show their symbols, their hand signs, to let you know they're a part of a gang. They could be young, they could be teenagers, they could be, like 16, 17, 18. They could be younger than that. Sometimes they could be like puberty age, 9, 10, 11, 12. Sometimes they'll be generational gangbangers. The father could be in it, the mother could be in it, and then the kids are in it. They teach the kids the gang signs. Kids grow up and they become gang members, your future gang members. Some women will have babies with gang members, and they'll teach the kids about the gangs. They learn it and they grow up in it. So you have these different groups that are Hispanic, and they primarily from out of Chicago area, and they're part of a gang. They stick together, they band together. Sometimes you don't know who's in the gangs, because it's hard, because a lot of times they'll adopt teams. Like it could be Chicago Bulls, it could be whatever the team for the city. Like for example, maybe if it's LA, you'll have like the LA, maybe the Dodgers, and they're wearing blue, so the gang, they wear blue and they have LA or whatever. But the hard part about that is a kid could maybe just like the team and like the colors and like the logos, and he may not be in a gang or affiliated, and he likes the attire and to wear a casual dress. But gangs will also want to wear the same or similar attire. So you see these guys, they have tattoos on the neck and about the face. And so when I was a teenager, I didn't really see gang members with tattoos on the face. Maybe they had it on their neck and hands and on their arms and their stomach and back, but never on the face. I didn't really see much of that, but it's starting to become a trend where I'm seeing a lot of more people that are involved. Some people who aren't even in gangs will now be tattooing their face. So like I said, there are gangs that are black, there are gangs that are Hispanic, Mexican, Latino, and also there are white gang members, Nazi gangs, white supremacist hate gangs, Russian gangs, gangs from all over in various parts of the country. So they'll also have similar ways of showing they're in a gang by tattooing their face, their skull, their neck, their head, their arm, their legs, their fingers, toes, everywhere. Sometimes I've seen people tattoos on their eyelids and on their eyebrows, and they want you to know they're a part of a gang. They'll have the name of the gang, swastikas. This is a Russian gang, and their attire is very similar to some of the people that you see in the States, you know, with the baseball cap, the New York Knicks, or they'll have like, you know, it's like jerseys on with numbers, team numbers. You know, they'll have guns, weapons, be just as dangerous and deadly as anybody else. And they're white. Just because they're from another country doesn't mean that they can't be dangerous. You know, like, you know, a lot of times people will see the news and they see, you know, the black gang members and they think only black people, it's black boys or the black guys in Chicago, and they don't know, people who don't get out much or they don't see anything else, or racist people will look at that and they use that. A lot of times you'll have people that won't look at these type of gang members. They'll think, oh, he's just a guy, they're just joking around, but they're part of a gang. Like I said, they can tattoo their eyebrows. This is a gang member. He's tattooed his neck, he tattooed his eyebrows. He looks like he may have teardrops, showing you how much time he's done in prison, and that he's like a real tough guy, and that he's not afraid to get into confrontation with you. You have white young boys who are impressionable and they'll join gangs, and they have gang symbols to let you know what gang that they're affiliated with, or who they're affiliated with, or associate themselves with, classify themselves with, or wear different clothes. It could be a white t-shirt, their hat pulled back. They'll also tattoo their stomach, tattoo their back, tattoo everywhere, body piercings, and they'll hang out with one another, stick together. And there's gangs that are apart or affiliated with hate groups like the KKK, or they could be Nazis or skinheads, and they'll have swastikas, they'll have symbols on their arms, their back, their everywhere that they can put it, and they kind of let you know who they're associated with, and it's a way of intimidation and to let you know who they're a part of, and that you must be very careful around them and don't take them as an easy way. And so some people will see people with tattoos and think, oh, it's just heavy metal, they just like rock music, but sometimes they could be a part of a really bad biker gang or a white supremacist gang. Undercover, they could be a skinhead and you wouldn't know it. They can have symbols such as these, and so they have gang identification task force who will get these symbols so that they can learn what the symbols mean. And these particular symbols are part of Nazi and hate groups and white supremacist hate groups. And so that's why you see the symbols on his neck, and you'll see guys like this. They're in gangs, or they're a part of gangs, and they may not have as many tattoos, but they're just as deadly or just as dangerous as the one with the tattoo. even without. So you have different gang members from different races, different backgrounds, different classes, different neighborhoods, and they can be black, they can be Hispanic, they can be Latino, Mexican, they can be male, female, they can be white, they can be poor. They might come from a family that maybe has some money or whatever, that they may not be poor, but they're involved in gangs. So it doesn't have to necessarily do with economic status as much as the person's character. So he's part of a Nazi hate group. He has a swastika on his belly. There are certain symbols that let you know. The lightning bolts is one. The swastika that let you know he's part of a white supremacist group. And there are white biker gangs that are into drug dealing, rape, stealing, killing, extortion, intimidation, shooting people, gunning people down. And so you're going to see many of these biker gangs, and they're located all out through and out California. You have your Hells Angels, your Mongols, you have lots of various different biker gangs. Peligroso. Some have like white people, some have white people who are Hispanic people who look more like they could pass for be more white. And then there's I believe there may be some Hispanic biker gangs as well. But these are your main biker gangs. You see the police. It was something that happened, and they had to have a sheriff out there because they can be very deadly. They can kill people, murder, and these are not just like regular bike riders. These are actual real biker gangs, and there's plenty of them. I mean, it ain't just like a group of 10. I mean, more like maybe 110. So you'll have lots of gang members that have Harleys or bikes, and they're white, and they're part of a mean biker group. And I've heard that if they have 1%, they're more aggressive. If they have the symbol, like a patch on their coat or their jacket, or a tattoo saying 1%, they're more aggressive. They're the more aggressive biker gang. And so you have the Mongols, the Hells Angels. They have tattoos on their neck, on their legs, on their back, primarily the biker gangs are big for not only tattoos but body piercings, so they'll have like a lot of body piercings. You'll see like a lot of, maybe even body branding, and they can be very intimidating. They can be dangerous, deadly. They can kill, they can maim, they can shoot. They have weapons. They get involved in drug dealing. So now that you know, there are other gangs that exist, not just the ones that you see on the news on Fox or whatever news stations that right now you're just hearing about Chicago, but there are other gangs that are doing things in various places. This is the Bandidos, and that sounds like a Hispanic name, and it looks like, if I'm seeing it clear, it looks like it says 1%. I'm not sure if I can see that, but this guy, he's trying to help these young youth so that they don't go down the wrong path. They can stay out of the gang, and they won't become a statistic